So thank you for joining me, Eli.
Yeah, it's a pleasure.
Oh, I'm glad. Thank you. I want to speak to a little bit to the audience to tell them what all this is about. You were on my channel. What is it? June 14th for the birth of this organization, Uniting the Cults. And a lot of what we talked about was culture of organizations. And I emailed you recently asking to have you come on again. And I wanted to see what you wanted to talk about before I stick my ideas in there. And you talked about culture again, culture of organizations. You might have said it a little bit different than that. And then I tried to nudge it after that. And the nudging I wanted was so let's see. I wanted to speak about organizations on a bigger scale. So an organization is a group of people that are going after the same goal or goals. And that's the way it's described by Eli Goldratt. Your theory of constraints is what we're talking about, the name or that this theory goes by. It's the scientific approach to organizations. And your history is, or your experience is organizations of the type, a business or a nonprofit, and even things like a government-run school education system. And then I know you and I have talked about a family as an organization. But I want to go broader and connect this to some other things I've been talking about on this podcast and things I've been thinking about for a long time. The entire human race as an organization.
Look, is it an organization? Because the problem number one, when you go even for a international, very big organization, it starts to be a problem to define the goal. What is the goal of the organization? Generally speaking, I mean, we come into the world, some of us as people have, we know, some of us, what we really like to achieve. Many of us do not. For an organization to function well, it is very important to define the goal well. And I've seen enough organizations in which this is not the case. It could be that within the organization there is disagreement about what the goal should be. And when this happens, this is actually problem number one of the organization, because it's kind of an inability to go either here or here, and there are conflicts all the time. I see it quite a lot in universities, because basically in the university you have two different goals, at least of the professors.
Opposing goals. Can you say them real quick?
Yeah, well, one of them is getting famous with research, and the other one is really teaching really well the students.
And so the first one is about making money because it is a business, and the second one is teaching students, which doesn't directly lead to making money for the organization.
Even number one is not so much about money, even though money exists and certainly is part of the personal goal of some of the professors, but not all. Many of them, money is a necessary condition. Now I have to say this differentiation between what is one entity in my goal that I like to maximize from my point of view up to infinity versus necessary conditions. So there are certain values that, again, there could be also the goal, but I'm saying if I reach this level, this is good enough for me. God forbid I don't want to be down. How much I'm up is less important, but I don't want less
minimum
than
threshold.
And so money, to many of us, is a necessary condition. And we can define for ourselves, okay, above this point, maybe I don't care so much about more money, and I care about many other things that I like. And the same is with organizations, that even commercial organizations need to have, not always they define it, the necessary condition that if they are below it, they are more important than making more money. You need to bring it back to this level. And we had some talks once about Boeing, and again, some of the conflicts there, and what could happen to you if you go on the money side too much. So some of the necessary conditions, like security for an airline, starts not to be as good as required, which means less than the level that they should put. Now, for an organization to do it is relatively easy. I thought a lot. Can I define the goal for my country? And here is not only that every party that we have has a somewhat different goal, that they try to say our values or our goal is more important than yours. And for me, there is a simple criteria, whether this works or not. Are you able in your organization to say, compare what you have achieved this year relatively to what you have achieved last year?
Did you make progress?
Did you make progress, or it is the same, or from whatever reason, maybe we have a lot to explain, but we are doing less. If you even cannot do this,
You mean if you can't identify whether you've progressed?
yes, if you cannot identify whether overall have you progressed or not, well, it sort of means you are in a problem. You don't define well the goal or the measurements or something of what you want, and there are some conflict there. So in some sides you may be better than last year, but in other sides maybe less. And here there is a certain confusion. For an organization, it's very important to have this one goal that they will say, we are doing better or not than last year.
Which applies to even a marriage of two people.
Even to two people, even though, again, could be a little bit diffused, even between the two people. We have achieved it, but we have lost something else. We have children, it's a lot of joy, but
Well,
we
what I
are
mean is,
quarreling so much more. And
well, what I meant was, in a marriage, say you've been married 5 years, if you can't clearly recognize whether the marriage has improved or got significantly worse, then you're in a really bad situation, because you can't even decide whether you should divorce or stay married.
okay, and then you might see that in too many years, you cannot absolutely say, so probably there was no big change. I agree with you, when there is a big change, probably it becomes very clear. Maybe also for a country, when there is a big change, people can say that we long to be how we were last year, but not this year. But most of the time, such big changes don't happen.
But even
In
big
marriage,
changes,
they can
let me
happen
ask your
more.
opinion. Let me ask your opinion. Even a big change like what happened with COVID, would you say that was a big change?
Well, I don't know, because again, there are so many other things. COVID will tell me, because there was COVID, we have lost quite a lot of value here and here and here, things that we appreciate. much more, we were so much more at home. We didn't see many other people. Economically, okay, depends. Eh, eh, so I don't know. I can tell you now that being in a war does make a very critical change that you see. So you fully recognize it. COVID is here and there, yes. I mean, we can say COVID made some changes. Most of them we don't like. Maybe somehow some of them maybe are nice. So here we can talk with each other even though we are apart. I'm not sure how many thousand miles we are apart, but okay. uh, Quite a lot. And this is also kind of a recognition. It was before, but within COVID, the ability to have a video talk with someone far away becomes so much better. So there are some good things that suddenly came up during COVID. Okay.
Well, a good thing that I think should have happened, and I don't know if that it did, is that we're more prepared for the next COVID.
Yeah, could be, I hope, unless it is of a very different kind. Are we fully ready for a much, much, much more
Deadly.
bizarre climate?
Oh,
Uh,
yeah. It's also hard to tell how bizarre it's going to get. We don't
yeah,
know.
okay, hard to tell, but we have imagination, so we a little bit
Yeah.
already know the direction,
We've
and it
seen things
could be
happening already.
frightening.
Yes.
It could
Extra
be
tornadoes,
frightening,
extra hurricanes.
including the sea level going up.
Yeah.
And so I don't know how much of our ground will be taken by the sea. Well, okay, I don't know. Eh, but again, what is your goal becomes much more difficult. Certain, and the bigger you are, the more difficult it is to not only define it, but also get agreement on it. Because we are different people with different attitude
Different
to
values, different
different
backgrounds we're
ways.
coming from culturally.
Yeah,
So
all of
I
this.
go ahead.
And by the way, for me, this is also something interesting, which means, frankly, I don't want that the whole world will be one culture. One of the good things that happened to me in my life that I went to many different countries along the world, and I spoke with people who are not my relatives, that naturally I will try to see. But and then I could see the kind of different culture, how the different environment brought people to a little bit different kind of looking at the world, but also I could see how much in common we have. And I think this was great to see, to feel something a little bit different, somewhat a little bit different behavior. Eventually, they are human beings, and I'm a human being. And yes, we can get some kind of exchanging ideas and understanding a little bit more about each other. And but I don't want to be like them. I still like
So
the, my
I'd
own
like to
culture.
I'd like to address this, and I have a couple points from earlier I'd like to address too. So my conception, or whatever I've said so far about uh, treating or trying to interpret the entire world of humans as one organization and having a goal or subset of goals that we all share. When I'm asking for that, I'm not saying we should agree on everything and become the same culture. What I'm saying is, and I think it's best for me to explain this on a very, very small scale first. And I just thought of it during these 10 minutes so far. I didn't think of it before. If we think of a very small organization like two parents and a child, and if we think of what their goal should be? Well, first of all, if we're talking about a baby, they can't even help you in deciding what the goal should be. So the two parents are deciding. And one of the things that I think are important, and a lot of people share this view with me, at least in some way regarding a family, is there's some level of freedom that the parents give the child. And just as an example of a type of freedom, and I'm gonna say a joke that was said on Jerry Seinfeld's show, Seinfeld. Uh, George was suggesting a idea for them to make a show within the show, and he said, "So, Jerry, I think you're a construction worker, and you're trying to get your child to become a construction worker, and like pressuring him to do it or something." And Jerry says, "Well, why would I do that? Maybe he doesn't like construction work." So the point there is the parents shouldn't be trying to force or coerce or pressure the child to lead this same exact life that the parent does. The goal of what, without even defining what the goal is. I know I mentioned freedom, but without even defining what the goal is, whatever the goal is in that family, it should allow for this basic thing that we have different preferences. Not only do we have different preferences, we need all the jobs to get done. If everybody wanted just one job, this wouldn't work. There needs to be a lot of differences. But what's shared in this 3-unit family, in the type of family I'm talking about, is no one is trying to force the other one to do anything against their will.
Okay, if you're a parent and there is a child, sometimes you need to force your child. Question is, child at what age and how much freedom you give to him. And then again, if I try to think myself, I mean, I'm not a religious. I'm Jewish, but not a religious Jew. A very religious Jew would definitely, it looks very important for him that his child will remain very religious Jew. And then there are all certain levels. I mean, to become a very great rabbi is great. To be a lawyer, also okay, or doctor. To be a construction worker, whoa, no, don't go there. We live in our perception of reality, and there is one thing about we like our children to be somewhat similar to us in order at least that we will feel that we live longer. We will live through our children and their children. There is something like a feeling like this, I believe. And definitely within a time, how you educate your child, how much freedom you give, becomes more and more important. But again, I also have seen strange things in which, even if we speak about creativity or so, giving too much freedom is not good.
So I want
Let me
to.
tell you something. In some other part of my life, I studied at a film school. And I looked on the short movies that students have did for years. And there was a certain pattern that at first you are giving to do a short movie of your own that is very short and very restricted what needs to be there is. Towards the end, you are getting actually only a budget, and if you can add to it, you are allowed to, and you do whatever you like. And my judgment was that the more restricted movies were better than when given, you are free to do whatever you have in your mind. And I think that the whole film industry is something like this, because sometimes even if you take a genius, but you sort of limit the freedom, Many times the result is better. Can we learn from it? Maybe, I don't know. I just bring you kind of effects that I've seen in my life.
So I'm going to clarify what I said earlier in response to your follow-up. The concept of freedom includes the concept of defense. Without defense, there wouldn't really be freedom.
Mm-hmm.
And on a scale, okay, I'll give an example in a little family, and then the example on a country scale. In a little family, say there's two kids. If one kid is beating the shit out of the other kid, and if you just saying stop didn't work, then you have to forcefully remove the one kid from the other kid. So the one kid doesn't have the freedom to beat the shit out of the other kid. That's part of the point there. So, and on a scale of a country, we put murderers in jail.
Yes.
So there's nothing wrong there. On a scale of country to country, if okay, World War II, the Nazis decided to take over the whole world, and a bunch of us decided, no, we can't let that happen. So, to say infinite peace would be great, but but if somebody initiates a war, you have to do defensive war.
Okay, so this is absolutely clear everywhere. We like to have freedom, but not infinite freedom. So
And I think I already agreed with that. And maybe
we
you
need,
think there's a little bit more that needs to happen. I don't know.
yes, we need to put certain limits, and we may have different views where the limits exactly are. What
Yeah.
are the limits?
Yes.
Okay, but this, don't think we can avoid it. We can solve some of the problems. We cannot avoid it.
And we can keep getting better over time. Our conceptions of these things and the limits, for example.
Okay, better, and again, from who point of view? Look, because when you speak about two countries, you can take a stand who is right and who is wrong, but eventually it will not solve anything. So what left to us is a little bit to understand both sides. And then let us see whether we can have a solution that both of them will choose that solution as better than to go to war. Unfortunately, we do have, and this is my belief, that now extreme fanatic religious people have taken it very far because they take their religion as if they were given the license to kill. And this is spreading. It's not first time it happened in history. It happened to different religions. So somehow every religion is going through periods of fanatic and then much less so. What is a real religion behind it? Well, it's a question of interpretation, right? The religion itself usually have come out to do good
But
already.
sometimes it's very clear.
Yes, sometimes it's very clear that it
Like,
intended to do good and
well,
eventually created quite a lot of bad.
what I
Look,
meant
huge
was,
amount of wars happened because of religion. And then certainly murders, and if you take it in a smaller scale, huge amount. So the belief, very strong belief that we have that we are allowed to kill those who don't believe or do things against our belief is something that I don't know how to get rid of, but this is endanger the whole human world. This I like to see how can we restrain those. But the fact that people are different is great. And nations are somewhat different is great. And religion in itself, it could be very, very, very positive. Anyway, normally when you believe in God, whatever shape it will take, this is for Generally speaking, making good.
You mean like on average across all human beings today that believe in God, in general, they're doing good, not bad.
In general, the intention, sort of the religion to start with was to settle, to define what is good and what is bad, and try to do good.
I think almost all religions that is the case, but I think there's at least one that isn't. And I'm
Okay,
speaking. Okay.
look, if I don't know, you may be expert in it, I'm not. So I'm not so much expert to say if one is basically bad. But if I look on history, then into quite a lot of the time, uh, most of the religions did not do too bad. Religions.
Well,
Some of
so
the time,
so the example today is, just to say it out loud. It's been implied so far, but to say it out loud, the religion I'm speaking of is Islam. But if you were to ask, out of all the Muslims today, are they good or bad? Most of them are good.
absolutely. And if I look on history, quite a lot of years, the Islam did not do something that were truly awful, truly bad.
I'm not
So
sure what
it
you
was
mean there.
more restrained kind of. But the same will be with Christianity. Come on, there was the Spanish Inquisition.
Yeah, but I mean, this is off topic, by the way. I'm not sure we should talk about this part, but from
No,
my understanding, the Spanish Inquisition and the Crusades, those were things that weren't born from anything Jesus Christ said. And
look,
the things that's
eventually,
happening today,
because I really think that both Christianity, also Islam, intended to do good, generally speaking. But because of the existence of God, and this is the absolute truth. And if it is the absolute truth, you are getting that kind of power. Suddenly, it comes easily to do bad, and
I
they
agree with
did
that.
bad.
I
It's
agree with
done.
that last part. I disagree with the first part of what you said in that sentence, but I don't want to. I don't think we should discuss that here.
Okay,
If you're interested,
never
maybe we
mind.
go
But
for a
this is
podcast.
part of the. If you want to speak about culture, religion is part of the culture,
Mm-hmm.
and there are different religions, and not all of them I really understand or know too much about. Certainly not about those in Asia. And there are all kinds of beliefs people take that have no religious origin, but they take it as if it is religion. I really believe the Nazis thought that the Jewish nation is inherently bad. Why? I don't know why, but they believed very, very, very strongly. So even if you have converted your uh, religion, it didn't help you.
I have theories about it, but
Okay, we look. Question is if you like to be in ideal world, or what you say is, I have a certain situation. How can I improve it? This is the philosophy that I got from my own mentor. Okay,
Ellie
Eh,
Goldratt.
yeah. So you don't need to look that far to what is ideal. I don't know what is ideal. We only know that we should go closer to it as much as possible, but we will never reach it. Okay.
We can't be
So at
perfect.
any time, what can you do to significantly improve? And you can always improve more. We just stress a grasp of infinity. You go up to the infinity. To so here, countries and organization could be the same. But the problem with countries and the problem with any too big organization is that the goal is not very well defined.
But that's true
Sometimes it
even in a
fails.
3-unit family. the baby doesn't know the goal.
The baby does not know the goal. He still knows what's good for him or not, because when not, he
When he feels pain.
weep and or laugh or happy or cry. Okay, and then slowly he learns more and more.
Quickly, I
Okay,
would say.
yeah.
Quickly.
So
There's a
okay, and
lot
I
to learn.
think in the parent, like ourselves, or like about organization, we need to see at this stage what do we need to do in order to get an improvement, and we need to understand what do we mean by improvement, what is better, what situation in general is better, and then think, well, how do we reach it? This is our obligation, certainly within the family, or also if we are managers in an organization, uh, this is kind of our duty.
So I'd like to ask you, um, this conception I have of a world organization, it on some level, people, I'm not the first one to think of it, obviously. I think after World War II and what the Nazis did and Hitler, and well, actually, the a version of the UN existed before that. I forgot what it's called.
Yes, yes, yes. I also don't remember, but
And then there was the UN, and there was and I don't understand this very well. Maybe you can fill the gaps here. There was the Nuremberg Trials. And
mhm.
I don't know if that was a thing that was like within the UN or if it was
I
independent.
don't think so. But again, I'm not historian.
Okay.
I think this was the idea of the American of prosecuting the Nazis as they wanted to prosecute.
Yeah. So
Some other Nazis they just brought in to be of value to the United States.
yeah. So so the point is, I guess the UN was attempting to be a world organization, but even those Nuremberg trials is an attempt to do something like that because it's saying, hey, we need to have a set of rules that everyone follows. That's what the Nuremberg trials is doing.
Yes, you are right that this was kind of thing of what not to do, and we need to make it very clear things that uh, we don't allow to do
So
it.
I
Period.
think that was a very good step in humanity.
Yes, and the UN in itself was a good step, but also a very problematic after all, because it does not have real power. And
So what would be, instead of asking what is the ideal perfect, which we already know is wrong to even conceive of that, what is the ideal perfect UN or type of UN? Let's instead ask, what are the problems now and what could we improve from them? What's wrong with the UN and what should it be instead?
okay, there are certain problems in the UN that, again, if I would need to go and make analysis, I could start to make analysis. Better to do it with many others who really like to have a much more active UN. But the UN in itself, because its actions, I don't think they are too much admired in the world. But again, I come from a country that never liked the UN too much, and we have really our reasons to. We can take the Goldrat way of trying to make analysis of defining the undesired effect in which we agree this is an effect and we don't like it. Okay, we like it to be different, and then the question, if this is the case, why it is, what causes it, what can we do with the cause, with a kind of the idea, the philosophy of TOC is that when we go really uh, down, we will get a basic conflict. Can we call it the core conflict between two types of actions? And we probably have chosen to some kind of a compromise instead of solving the conflict, of trying to look for
And a lot of
the
people think of
assumption that we
compromises.
can challenge and then actually we can be suddenly so much more making good kind of organization. So UN exists, it brings some good to certain, I believe, quite a lot of countries, but within the world politics and the game power, it's pretty much useless, right?
I don't know too much about what the UN does, except for maybe the things that in relationship to Israel and Palestine. That's I don't know too much about what the UN does.
And it does not do much even with us. But it certainly will not do much with Russia, Ukraine, or with China, Taiwan.
Well, let's say that. Let's discuss that a little bit. So, what I would imagine a UN is supposed to be is a place where we're all discussing. At least that we're discussing. Instead of the alternative would be every
But
leader
there is
and
no
leader.
discussion. There is no discussion going in
There isn't.
which if I am if I am coming from Israel, you are, let us say, coming from Lebanon, let us assume we are just telling what my country likes. I'm not truly listening to you. You are not truly listening to me. We don't try together to see whether we can settle our clash.
What are they doing instead? They do talk,
Just voting, claiming, let us
but just
say,
voting.
yeah,
So no one's
there is
changing their
nothing.
minds.
They don't go into and they don't try to do anything.
And what's
So
the point of the voting? The voting is just to declare, okay, the majority of the world believes this, and then it stops. That's it. Nothing happens with those declarations.
about right, this is what the UN are doing.
So
To
to
my
me, that sounds
again,
ridiculous.
again, we're speaking about things that not you and also not me are really expert in.
Yeah, we're not at all.
There is a Security Council, or how it is called, that is somewhat more powerful. But again, it
They do
cannot really
investigations.
settle. Hmm?
They do. The UN does investigations, doesn't it?
It could, I don't know, this is a little bit a different kind of thing in investigation. But okay, there are all kinds of world kind of way to deal things, including the Hague court and things like this to try. But again, what you see is they are looking on the places in the world where can they, when they are able to intervene. They cannot intervene with Russia going into the Ukraine.
Well, let's be clear. The UN doesn't have a military, so it can't do anything
No,
anyway. But
no, but it can give some kind of verdict or
it can
whatever.
ask a country to do something, but it's just an ask.
Yes, and if enough countries would like to oblige, this could be of an influence.
So it seems like, and maybe I'm wrong here, that it's a UN is a place for the country leaders to discuss about what they're going to do together. But like you said, maybe they're not actually discussing and they're just voting.
And not discussing. Why should look if the Israeli Prime Minister would like to discuss something with the American president, they speak directly. They don't need the UN in order to talk.
Yeah, but okay, so I'm imagining a scenario where every world leader that wants to be in this thing, because some might say I don't want to be in there, and we shouldn't force them.
But
But suppose
also, the leaders think about their own. Why should the president of China, or whatever he's called, be really interested in the relationship between the Israelis and Hamas? He's
well,
much more. is much more looking for the overall interest of China, and so much better maybe to have now allies with Iran, which will probably put us to be pro-Hamas. So we will be, but we don't really understand what Hamas wants and what Israel
Well, I think
wants.
that's looking, if that's the case, if they're thinking that way, I think it's very short term and they're not looking very long term.
First of all, I really claim that the vast majority of the government and the political, they are built to look for the short term. And
Oh,
in some ways, they are not really wrong because there are too much uncertainty anyway. So, and the more you look into the future, the more uncertain you know what will be the condition of the world or whatever you try to achieve at that time. But certainly for politicians, certainly in democracy, in which after every 4 years or 5 years, whatever is a rule, you have a new vote. So I need to make an impact within the next 4 years. Okay? I assume in China is different, but I'm not sure I understand how it goes there. But in most of the world, there are something like this. There is basically short term. And come on, Rami, we are human beings, which means we are here for a certain short time. We don't know exactly how much. And we like, most of us, I don't know, to achieve something within our life. How much we will leave to the next generations, I mean, only very, very, very few of us will be remembered in the next generations anyway. So we try to do something short term. Yes, someone like Beethoven, yes, somehow he has influence, some influence, uh, quite a lot of years, 200 years after he has passed away, even more than 200, almost 300 years. Okay. Uh, not 300, 200 plus. Okay.
yeah, I don't know.
This is what it is. And Michelangelo and things like this. Copernicus also at least remembered.
Socrates.
Until
Socrates, 2,500 years.
Socrates, of course. Okay, remember, not that many people, and I don't know, it will be interesting how much they thought about it during their own life, that they are going to be remembered and learned and have some kind of influence for so
I
many
don't think
years.
they thought about it much.
The vast majority of the people don't have any hope for it. And so, and then a little bit, I mean, I believe that being parents is probably also some kind of try to keep something of me to the next generations. I
A lot of
believe that probably there is something like this here. It is not translated into anything that I can say. It can explain the parents that you were speaking about, that if he's a construction worker, he likes his son to be a construction worker and not something totally different. Maybe this is what goes on in the mind of some people, but it gets more diffused today because, come on, 200 years ago, this was the usual situation, right? So the children, what they did in their life was very similar to what their parent did in their life.
And
That's
part of that
because
was
there
it's
were
very
not all that
difficult.
many options anyway.
Well, it was also very difficult to learn some other trade, yeah,
Yes,
that wasn't in your household.
absolutely. So we are different. So, but then we like to learn. The passion to learn. This is one thing that, for instance, I can say this is part of the Jewish tradition. My mother once told me she was one of 7 children living between Russia, Lithuania. And she said, we had time in the family that we had money and we had time in which we almost did not have money. This forces the family to have a very clear priority set.
If they do it right, yeah.
Living is number one, what you really need to live. Number two, children must study. Number two. And this was very ingrained. So what to learn depends, okay? They've all learned, but different things. So, okay, this is kind of a tradition, but also some kind of a wish. So I don't wish my child to do exactly what I did, but I would like my children to learn. This
Yeah,
was important for me. I don't know what I will do if they tell me no way.
well, what happened in my family was what I recognized was that both my parents very highly valued education. And I could tell really quickly. Well, I mean, I don't know how to describe this, but I got it from them. And I loved everything to do with school or whatever. Not everything to do with school. I mean, the actual education part, not all the institutional nonsense, like
Sure.
how it
Yeah.
kind of acts like a prison. But
Yes.
so, and I think at least my dad, he would do things like sort of pressure us to study or whatever. I don't think that ever affected me. I liked school independent of him pressuring me, so I don't think it affected me. But I think that can be negative for somebody that for a different scenario. Just I was just lucky, I think. But anyway, the thing you just said, a big goal for you're saying Jewish families is education.
Yes.
I think that has to also exist. Let me say it another way. The UN, we just said now they don't discuss, they need to be discussing. And the purpose of the discussing is to find our mistakes and fix them and improve and make progress. That's education, a type of it. That needs to be happening. It needs to be happening in any kind of organization. Right? So I guess, we just identified something. Before this talk, I did not know that the UN doesn't discuss. I didn't realize.
Theoretically discusses, but again, there is no exchange.
There's not a two-way discussion. Or
okay, someone who go either the ambassador or maybe sometimes the foreign minister, minister of foreign affairs coming, talking to what? Talking.
It's one-way discussion.
It is totally one way. Okay, and some people listen, most not. So this might be kind of an answer. I mean, to me, this is probably more than nothing, but it is really very little. What the UN tries to do, probably in Africa, could be very, very, very positive. Trying to get to do to help people who really need help, trying to teach the kids that have no other way to even know how to read and write.
The UN is involved in that? I didn't know.
I think there is quite a lot in UN that try to do that. That somehow getting money from some of the countries that are helping them. And then the UN tries to organize. This is nice. And then there are all kinds of other people in the world that if they have so much money, some of them give the money for initiatives like this, something else, which is good, which helps something. Now again, Rami, when you look on what you look, what you like to change, what you like to that you see. This is the most acute problem right now that maybe I can contribute to a solution. You know, in TOC we said we have three critical questions which every manager, if you want also every politician or what, should always ask himself, always, what to change, which means identify the area where a change will give you the maximum value. What to change to, which means bringing the solution to, and then how to cause a change. Because usually changes are not easy to implement. Okay, these are the, and I think the UN should ask himself, everyone, whether it's his family, also see, okay, what is the real current problem in my family that if I give this help or I can create this solution, this will be significant.
I think for a lot of families, that's uh, okay. What to change is asking what is the constraint, right?
What is a constraint or what is a core problem?
Yeah.
I don't want to get into just terminology. Uh, I want just to see, I want to identify the ones improvements that if I succeed to improve, this will be really felt. This will really do good. And then I need to come up with a solution. And part of the problem in many good thinkers that they take the first and second question and make it one question. Like what I need to do now, that is both diagnosis and the solution. So they come up with a solution. Sometimes in order when I ask them what is wrong, actually they give me their solution that is not yet implemented. Okay, this is what you like to do, but what is a problem to start with? Let us go backwards, and then because maybe there are other ways to deal with this problem.
So the
And
way I
then,
the way I
sorry,
describe this in philosophy is I've said this recently. A lot of people, the way they think is they have a thought in their head and it is a statement. It is an answer to a question, but it is divorced from any question.
right,
And that's what I think you were just describing.
right. First of all, start with the question, what to change? What really bothers me at most currently that if I take care of it, things will be much better. Then how do I achieve it? And then how do I implement it? How do I really stick to it, implement it, maybe overcome resistance if there is, or convince other people that this is what we have to do?
So I'd like to bring up something, or unless you want to continue on regarding the UN or a something
No,
like the UN.
I don't have
What would
much
be
to
what to
say
change?
about the UN. UN needs to ask themselves very hard question why they have so little impact on the life of the world politics. Like you say, it came up in the first place after World War One in order not to cause World War Two, but it happened anyway. And then again, it was some kind of idea like this. But this was the UN, and
Can we talk about that really quick? It's a little bit off topic, but I think it's relevant to the main topic here. The way World War One ended and the way World War Two ended. What I understand about what happened after World War One was the world leaders, the winners, effectively punished Germany,
mhm,
and like let's say severely. And what I understand of what happened after World War II, and actually, let me say this first. One theory I have is, and I got this from other people. I'm sure other people say this. World War II happened because of the way World War I was dealt with at the end of it. That's one theory. World War II, the way it was treated at the end was very different than the way World War I was treated. We, instead of punishing, we actually helped Europe. America did the Marshall Plan. And I saw a documentary where they asked, or I don't remember the details, but they were discussing the German view after World War II of, let's say, what was it? Okay, after World War One, the German view didn't really change much. Like there was still a lot of hate, whatever they were thinking that caused, it's all the same. After World War II, it seemed like the Germans, based on again documentaries I've seen, let go of whatever hate they had for Jews or whatever else. And I think it's because of the way they were treated after World War II. How
Probably look again. I've heard a little bit of historian talking about it, and I don't know enough. But you are first of all right that the treatment of the world was strictly different and quite a lot impacted by kind of realization of how World War One has ended and then somehow turned into World War II. And so, how to do it differently? Even though I have to say, look, from in the Western world, I think the US was a key in how to treat Germany and also how to treat Japan.
okay.
And probably in both cases, they realized to do it very differently than last time. There still were the Nuremberg Trials. I don't think something similar happened in Japan, but they did help them in order to become coming up again and let Germans lead the change. Because definitely Americans could not tell Germany, and certainly they could not tell Japan how to behave. But they helped. I heard a little bit more about the help Japan got, because at that time they got quite a lot of help from what later turned out to be TQM many years later. But really speaking about some ideas of quality and how to turn an organization into.
Who was it that was teaching the Japanese about this?
They sent professors, so they sent, I believe, Deming and Juran, that became much later famous. They came as part of the Marshall Plan, I believe,
I see.
to Japan in the late 40s to teach them certain things that.
And it worked really well because it made Toyota.
Yes, and in in the 80s, when the world was almost shocked by the huge success of Japan, coming into Japan and how you came into it, partially it came, you taught us. But we took it seriously.
And then we learned from them again.
Absolutely. This is extremely interesting.
From the number 2 man of Toyota, which is Ono.
Ono, yes. And Goldratt was very much interested in Dr. Ono. Actually, they succeeded to meet one before Dr. Ono died. And okay, so Ono led some kind of new ideas coming, and they succeeded. They succeeded very well until they stuck again. and this
Yeah,
could
they seem
happen
stuck now.
probably.
But I guess the point I get, if I was to try to make a point of the thing I just said, I think we learned something big, and we got some good evidence agreeing with our theory about how we treated World War II and World War One differently, and some of that stuff could be reused for this. I mean, that is a world organization type of event.
Look, you learn from history, but you learn really when you bring it into cause and effect, a little bit removed from the exact situation that was at that time, in order to get the real lesson somewhat later. One of the things that was done later was really in Germany and in Japan. I mean, they did not try to rule both countries. There was not a try. So German needed to be managed by its own, maybe some restriction.
Yeah, it can't be a
And,
vassal state.
and so Japan, and this was done probably in a good way, because those who came, they tried to see, okay, what went wrong and how do we do it now right? And this was a huge challenge. And come on, both countries eventually succeeded fantastically, at least from economy point of view, in a huge way, in
Well, there's
bringing
another
the
way they
energy,
succeeded.
understanding the energy, understanding the good points that they have and how to bring them into the right track. This is actually, it's extraordinary. Believe we need to learn a little bit from it, but we need to define it in a cause and effect, because I don't like just learning from history and you learn about shapes, but if you don't fully understand the cause and effect, it could hit you all the way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So you so but this I am about learning in general. uh, I assume you are aware of for me, this is a very important paper that I wrote about learning from surprises. Also something that I try to do, and it is difficult to do because if people would like to learn, they need to admit their mistakes. And this goes, why I'm saying learning from a surprise, because on one hand, when I'm surprised, sometimes I'm surprised in a good way, sometimes in a bad way. In both ways, I'm surprised because it is something I did not expect.
And it
It
didn't match your intuition.
didn't match my intuition or a certain paradigm of mine. And I like to identify the paradigm that needs updating. The paradigm in itself is not necessarily wrong. If I tend to believe in people and then I met someone who really conned me and I don't know, stole from me quite a lot of money, my learning is not never to trust anyone again,
Right.
and to understand what are the signals that I should have seen, that,
And what
but
methods we should use to defend against con men before we know somebody is a con man.
right, absolutely. Otherwise, we are getting into the other side, which is wrong as well.
Yeah.
So we need to learn the right lesson, and it's not easy. And it means that you need to admit that you didn't know, that you were mistaken. And it's not very nice for me, but maybe it is a need, and I need to recognize it. When I started to program computers, one thing that you have to live if you are a programmer is a computer always shout on you, you are stupid all the
It tells you
time,
when you're wrong.
because you have put these instructions and they have a conflict, and then you get you didn't get what you want. I did exactly what you told me, exactly. Now you need to come back and see what you made wrong. And look, at least in my time, I would say that normal programmer would spend 70% of the time correcting his or her mistakes that he did before.
So you're saying 30% of your time you're writing code and 70% you're fixing the code that you wrote that didn't work.
Yes, yes. And what I thought about it, that probably this is right not only to the code I write, and the computer can tell me how stupid I am, but it happens all the time, but I don't have this feedback
Right.
to tell me that I was misunderstood or what.
Unless
Okay.
you have another scientist doing that. So in the field of physics, it is very common for the other physicists to tell you when you're wrong.
Yes, okay. It is. And again, it happens, and it does not mean that you are no good. It means pretty normal. But then we can take the mistakes we did and somehow we got a signal that we made them and learn from them. And then, by the way, when I did it with a company, I mean, I cannot speak much about it, but the ramification of the update of the paradigm was huge. So it was not just, to cover the specific case in which there was such kind of surprise that they were ready to make an analysis to see what really happened. And suddenly we got something that is so much wider, with much wider value. Because this is what happens when you are going to a paradigm that, again, a flawed paradigm, which means there is a flaw in it, but overall it could be about right.
Yeah.
And now you fill in something, and suddenly quite a lot of things go much better than before, because the signal that you were mistaken was not all that clear. That's all.
Yeah. So to say it another way, a small improvement in your paradigm can have very huge effects, improvement in effects, the
Yes,
results
absolutely.
in many, many, many areas.
In many, many, many areas, and it's up to you to go and do it.
Yeah, it
Because
doesn't happen automatically. Just because you updated your paradigm.
otherwise you are going into inertia, and you don't know what you have learned, only that it is not exactly on this situation, it's a somewhat different situation.
And you mentioned learning from surprises, and I guess the idea is the normal thing that people are doing is when they get surprised, they kind of just leave it in a box and don't try to update their paradigm.
Absolutely, absolutely. They say someone was wrong, so maybe we should fire him or what. As if I fire him and I will put somebody else instead, this somebody else will not make this mistake.
Yeah, that's another way of saying,
Yes, but the world is against it. I once read a small in the newspaper about a certain mayor of a small town in Israel who did something that is fantastic. And then came all the complaints that he did so after he was already 7 years serving as a mayor and he did not do it.
Yeah.
Come on.
You're saying they're making complaints that they shouldn't be making?
Absolutely.
So
We
I have
are making mistakes, and we are blind to see that there are mistakes. Okay, we don't see the full cause and effect from what we did until something happens that we don't like. And he has seen it, he has corrected it, fixed it, instead of, great, this is what everybody should do all the time, correcting their mistakes. But then you made these mistakes for the last 7 years. Come on. Okay, yes, I did. Also others did. Okay. So what?
I mean, they're not doing the kind of thinking that we've been talking about, which one way to describe
Yes.
it is scientific
But
thinking.
this is a vast majority. I see it all the time, always, always.
And
With
you mean
all,
even with the world leaders?
of course, with the world leaders, this is so easy to come to them to say, this was, you've seen it and you did nothing, and then this happened. Okay, but where was really our failure? Look, there are all kinds of wrong thinking that is going into the world, and we need to understand from what we do a lot of mistakes. Okay? We need somehow to get the signal of what was a mistake and then try to locate how come that we did this mistake. Because this is really not a trivial question. And many times the first answer you will give me is not the right one. Think a little bit again about the cause and effect, and then you will go. There's so many examples for it, also with scientists. And this should be the normal way, really, of trying to treat a mistake is absolutely right. Repeating it all the time, this is not.
Yeah, and just to tell people where these ideas started from, and I mean that is famous. I mean, of course, it could be older. Socrates talked about these things.
Of course, of course,
Fallibility.
of course.
We can never be perfect. It's impossible to know for sure or 100 or to have 100% certainty that we're right about something. So the methods in which we deal with our mistakes, potential mistakes, and disagreements, the methods matter.
Of course, the methods matter. And if you try to hide your mistakes,
That's a method.
okay, I can understand why you do it. But for yourself, why shouldn't you take the opportunity that you already know that you made a mistake
Yes.
and try to learn from it, but really learn it? Learn where did it come from?
If you were surprised, start looking at your paradigm.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, absolutely.
You know, and an example in a company, if an employee is not acting right, you know, one potential theory is something's wrong with the employee, but the more likely scenario is there's something wrong with the culture.
Yes, so the culture is a culture of blaming instead of understanding of blaming. This is a key culture and it is very problematic and it stops learning. There is a refusal to learn because I'm not ready to admit I made a mistake. It
It's
does not
sabotaging
do good to
progress.
me.
Sabotaging progress. Yes.
Yes, at
And
some time.
I wonder if the concept of voting, because of at least the way we do it today, you know, when we go to vote, there's an intention of, yeah, we're not going to have a discussion, we're not changing our minds, we're just going to vote on what our current thinking is. And then when we do that without the previous part of let's first discuss, uh, you're sabotaging progress. And I don't know if some places are doing it better. This reminds me of a professor of, I don't remember which field. Maybe it's like politics or like sociology. I don't know what. This was like 25 years ago, maybe, where he started this. He wanted to, well, the way he envisioned it was to have a fourth branch of government in the US. And the fourth branch of government, I forget the name he used, but the concept was that citizens gather up, I think it was once a year, a few of them, obviously not everyone, to have discussions about important issues. And the point of the discussions was to change minds. And then at the end of the event, there is a voting in the sense to see where, the statistical opinions came out. And he did this actually in many, many countries. And of course, because it's not an official branch of government, it's just to produce a report of people's opinions. The part of the concept was, part of what he said was, when if you're going to have this place where these people are discussing, you want to have a representative set of the country. So, there should be a doctor, there should be a construction worker, there should be a politician, there should be, and one of everything. And part of the logic there is every group of people is getting represented by someone who's speaking for them, and at least that knowledge is coming out. Anyway,
But again, the question is how people listen to each other and how they react. In the developing the thinking processes, which is an important part in theory of constraints, Goddard came with something that is called the categories of legitimate reservations.
I remember.
Which, if you want, it is to get some kind of law and order when we discuss things and try to look. So I claim that because we were rushing to develop our new products, we neglected some other types of product and something like this. And so if I'm actually claiming that we were focusing on something, and because of this we did not do others, this is a logical claim. How do you make reservation to this logical claim? And so there are categories that says, for instance, you claim that we were focusing, not right, we were not focusing on this at all. It just came, but we were doing all the rest. This means there is no cause, or the entity itself is not there. I'm not going through it, but there are 8 definitions of what I can. And now, whenever I'm trying to argue against you, I need to explain why, in what way I claim you are not correct, in which your logic does not cover it. This brings somewhat order.
Yes.
It should be tested. To me, it looks pretty good. Again, with the thinking processes, I think they are very useful, but they have their boundaries. But generally speaking, this is something that we need to do, because the vast majority of the discussion I hear in the TV or whatever, people are coming with one view and they're going out with exactly the same view. All of them. So what is the value of discussing it?
I can tell you what their goal is, the people that are doing it. Let me say it this way. So you hear people use the word debate, and there's like 2 definitions that are opposite of each other. What people usually mean by debate is, well, let me say the correct one first. A proper debate is 2 scientists having a discussion using scientific approach, cause and effect, all that stuff. Categories of legitimate reservations. The opposite thing, which also goes by the name debate, is I'm going to trick everyone to believe what I believe by doing things while cheating and not using the legitimate reservations, using other ones that nobody knows are wrong, and seeming confident in the way you talk. You see it a lot, obviously, in like a presidential debate or whatever. Somebody will say something funny, and the point of saying something funny is to trick the audience into believing you, even though it's not about the actual content of the thing you want them to believe. It's just trickery.
Yes. Okay, you can see it in court. This is also something that takes place. In court, it is adversary, which means they cannot come together. You have the prosecution and you have the defense, and each one of them claiming how to eventually impact the judge or the jury. Okay, we have here a problem, again, with a kind of thing that if we argue and eventually I admit that you were right, I have to be ashamed, right?
That is a common view, yes.
And it blocking us.
Yes. Sabotages progress, sabotages learning. So, as an example that just came up for me yesterday, I was doing a reaction video to a interview between Ayan Hirsi Ali and Richard Dawkins, a very recent thing, like 7 months ago, where she was, it's titled The God Debate, but she was explaining why she became a Christian. And in that interview, she was explaining that when she was an atheist, she was mocking theists. And I paused the video to explain to the audience, that is horrible. That's like me shaming my past self, which is no different than shaming me now, in effect, because I'm still making some mistakes. So in the future, according to this logic, in the future, I'm going to be ashamed of mistakes that I have now that I don't know about. No, shame is wrong. I think Christianity, or at least some flavor of Christianity, has this concept in it of no shame.
Look, shame could be right if I did something very bad.
Like serial killing 5 people.
Or even because of my negligence, somebody died. I did not want him or her to die. But I didn't notice this and that. I mean, I was busy with myself. I didn't see it.
Okay, are you? I wonder if you're conflating. I want to help myself understand what you're saying. A lot of people see shame. Okay, you feel bad, but I can feel bad because somebody died. Do I need to feel bad that I could have prevented it?
Look, I don't know. Because eventually this is kind of an emotion. Fact is, okay, I should have seen it. Okay, should. Could be a shame or could be really to put trigger never again, which is the right thing to do, right?
Which is still hard to do because you can still do it again.
Of course it is hard to do.
We're
And this is, look, this is part of the world of medicine. They live in it. They live in a situation in which actually any doctor for quite many years probably has some cases in which, because of his mistakes, a patient died. The same will go for generals in the army if they are going to war. Okay. I remember once General Patton said it that, yeah, one day I was a little bit confused and a whole, I don't know how you call it, group of soldiers were killed, should not have been killed. Okay. But so when you deal with life and death, the small mistakes you do have a lot of impact. If my mistakes are simple, that don't make you huge negative things, I can easily forgive myself. Shame in itself is bad because it does not bring me to the right direction. But if I take it, this is a lesson, and never again, this could be used in the right way.
So I'd like to be more clear. I think the way in which shame results in sabotaging learning and progress is because you feel bad, you don't want to think about it.
Mm-hmm.
So you're not thinking, and then you're not improving.
Well,
If somebody dies and I think it's caused by my negligence, for one thing, I'm gonna feel bad that they died. Let's say it's somebody I love and I lost them. But then if there's the feel bad uh, because I caused it and I should have did something different, and then if because of that feeling I didn't think and didn't solve the problem and I didn't improve, then that whole thing is bad. If I felt ashamed but I still did the necessary thinking, then it's fine. So I just wanted to clarify that for people.
yes, okay, quite. We need to think about how to be useful and positive, and not just that we uh, torture ourselves for nothing.
Yes, yes, yeah, and I guess there should be no torture. I don't think there's a torture for ourselves for something valuable or something good or something we should keep. Um, that's a little bit similar to the World War I, World War II thing. If I was to boil it down to just a few short words, the way we responded to World War I was the winners punished the losers, and in the World War II, it was the winners helped the losers become winners.
Eventually, yes. I don't know whether this was the original intention.
Yeah, I don't know
The
how.
original intention was at least let us bring them to some kind of a state that they could hold their own and they will not need us anymore. But
Yeah, do you know how
eventually,
long? Do you know how long before the Marshall Plan was executed after the end of World War II? Yeah,
again, I'm not historian, so
I don't know either.
I
My
don't.
guess it was kind of short, but now I'm interested to go find out. So we've talked a lot. We're an hour and a half in. Do you have any last thoughts before we get off here?
Again, I like to put, if we speak about culture and about, as long as it is also about organization, it's still there within sometimes the culture is either call it a constraint or a real blockage to achieve something. And we cannot just change culture. So we need to see within the current culture what element that if we improve it, this will bring a lot of value. This is where we need to go. To use this focusing on what really brings the huge value, including when we speak about culture, and many times within organization, we need to improve the culture. Don't go everywhere. Try to find out currently what is the key point and improve it. Next time you will look again what is the key point and
We can
improve it.
change.
Trying to solve everything is useless.
Yeah, because you can't. We don't have infinite attention. Yeah. Well, thank you for joining us, and we'll
Thank
see you next
you.
time, Ellie.
See
Thank
you.
you, everyone.
Bye bye.